What if I told you there was a dinosaur that looked like someone took a bull, crossed it with a sports car, and then gave it the hunting instincts of a cheetah? You'd probably think I was making it up, but 70 million years ago, roaming the ancient plains of what we now call Argentina, there lived one of the most bizarre and fascinating predators ever to grace our planet. This wasn't your typical massive lumbering carnivore. No, this was something entirely different. Something that would make modern predators look like they were moving in slow motion. Meet the Carnotaurus, and trust me, once you understand just how incredible this creature really was, you'll never look at dinosaurs the same way again. Because everything you think you know about prehistoric hunters is about to be completely turned upside down. Now, before we dive deep into the mind-blowing anatomy of this beast, let me paint you a picture of what paleontologists felt when they first discovered this thing. Imagine spending your entire career studying dinosaur fossils, thinking you've seen it all, and then suddenly you uncover something so weird, so perfectly engineered for destruction, that it defies everything you thought was possible. That's exactly what happened when scientists first laid eyes on Carnotaurus remains. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. We're not just talking about a few scattered bones or educated guesses about what this animal might have looked like. We actually have fossilized skin impressions from this dinosaur. Think about that for a second. We can literally see what this creature's hide looked like millions of years ago. That's like finding a perfectly preserved photograph from the age of dinosaurs. And what that evidence reveals is absolutely mind-blowing. This wasn't just another generic meat-eating dinosaur. This was a biological masterpiece, a creature so perfectly adapted for speed and predation that it makes modern hunters look clumsy by comparison. Every single feature of this animal, from its bizarre horned skull to its impossibly tiny arms, served a specific purpose in its deadly hunting strategy. Let's start with the most obvious feature, the one that earned this dinosaur its name. Those massive bull-like horns jutting out above its eyes weren't just for show. While other carnivorous dinosaurs relied on brute strength or massive size, Carnotaurus took a completely different approach. These weren't delicate ornamental features like you might see on some herbivorous species. These were thick, robust structures built to withstand serious impact. Picture two of these beasts facing off against each other, their horned skulls crashing together like battering rams. The sound alone would have been absolutely terrifying, echoing across the prehistoric landscape like thunder. But these confrontations weren't random acts of violence. They were carefully choreographed displays of dominance, each animal testing the other's strength and resolve. The skull itself tells an even more fascinating story. Most large predatory dinosaurs had elongated skulls designed for delivering crushing bites. But Carnotaurus went a completely different route. Its skull was deep and compressed, almost wedge-shaped, like nature had designed the perfect biological weapon. This wasn't built for crushing bones like some massive hydraulic press. This was engineered for something far more sophisticated. Those powerful jaw muscles weren't just randomly placed either. The shortened skull design allowed for incredibly quick, precise strikes. While other predators might lumber forward with their massive heads, delivering slow but devastating bites, Carnotaurus could snap its head side to side with lightning speed, slicing through flesh like a living blade. And speaking of blades, let's talk about those teeth. These weren't the massive, bone-crushing fangs you might expect from a large carnivore. Instead, they were curved, razor-sharp instruments designed for one specific purpose: cutting. Each tooth was perfectly shaped to slice through tissue with minimal resistance, allowing this predator to inflict maximum damage with incredible efficiency. But here's where things get really interesting. Those ridiculously tiny arms that make even T-Rex look well-armed weren't a design flaw. They were actually a feature. Think about it from an engineering perspective. Every ounce of weight this animal carried had to be justified. Those arms weren't contributing to hunting or defense, so evolution basically said, why waste energy on them? Instead, all that biological investment went into the features that really mattered. Those massive leg muscles, that perfectly balanced skull, that incredibly efficient cardiovascular system. This was biological optimization taken to its absolute extreme. Now, let's talk about what made this creature truly special: the locomotion system. Most people think of large dinosaurs as slow, lumbering giants, but Carnotaurus completely shatters that misconception. This animal was built like a biological Formula One race car, engineered for one thing above all else: speed. Those long, powerful legs weren't just randomly oversized. The bone structure, muscle attachment points, and joint mechanics were all perfectly aligned to generate maximum forward thrust. The thigh muscles alone were absolutely massive, providing the kind of explosive power that would make modern sprinters weep with envy. But it wasn't just about raw power. The hip structure was completely unique among large theropods, allowing for an incredibly efficient stride pattern, while other dinosaurs might lumber forward with awkward, energy-wasting gaits. Carnotaurus could maintain high speeds with remarkable efficiency. And that tail wasn't just dragging along behind for the ride. This was a sophisticated piece of biological engineering, acting like a dynamic stabilization system. The tendons were specially reinforced to handle the stresses of high-speed maneuvering, allowing this predator to change direction at full sprint without losing balance or momentum. Imagine watching this creature in action. Pictures an open plain 70 million years ago, and suddenly this horned nightmare comes sprinting across the landscape at speeds that would make a modern racehorse look sluggish. Its massive legs eating up ground with each stride, that tail whipping back and forth to maintain perfect balance, those fierce eyes locked onto its target with deadly precision. But speed alone doesn't make a perfect predator. You also need the sensory equipment to find your prey, track its movements, and strike with deadly accuracy. And this is where Carnotaurus really shows off its biological sophistication. Those eyes weren't just randomly placed on the sides of its head like most dinosaurs. They were positioned more forward, creating something called binocular vision. This gave the animal the ability to judge distances with incredible precision, absolutely crucial when you're closing in on prey at high speed. One miscalculation at those velocities could mean the difference between a successful hunt and a catastrophic crash. The hearing system was equally impressive. While we can't know exactly what sounds this creature could detect, the inner ear structure suggests it was perfectly tuned for picking up low-frequency vibrations. The kind of sounds made by running prey just about hearing, it was about distant calls or approaching rivals. This wasn't gathering tactical information from the environment. And let's not forget the sense of smell. That olfactory system was sophisticated enough to detect prey from considerable distances, track wounded animals, or even identify potential mates or rivals. This was like having a built-in GPS system that could navigate using chemical signals invisible to other creatures. But perhaps most fascinating of all was the thermoregulation system. Running at high speeds generates enormous amounts of heat, and in the warm climate of the late Cretaceous period, overheating could be a death sentence. Some researchers believe this animal had specialized skin structures that helped it stay cool during those high-speed chases, like a biological cooling system built right into its hide. Think about the incredible engineering challenge this represents. You need an animal that can generate explosive bursts of speed, maintain that speed over considerable distances, navigate complex terrain at high velocity, and do it all without overheating or losing the sensory awareness needed to track and capture prey. Nature spent millions of years perfecting this biological machine, and the result was something that seems almost too incredible to be real. But it was real, and it was absolutely devastating to anything unlucky enough to find itself in its crosshairs. Now here's where Carnotaurus gets even more incredible, and this is something that absolutely blew my mind when I first learned about it. We're not just guessing about what this creature looked like based on bones alone. We actually have direct evidence of its skin texture, and what that evidence reveals is absolutely extraordinary. Picture this scenario. You're a paleontologist working in the Badlands of Argentina, carefully excavating what you think is just another dinosaur skeleton. But then you notice something unusual. The rock around the bones has these strange patterns, these detailed impressions that look almost too good to be true. And then it hits you. You're not just looking at fossilized bones. You're looking at fossilized skin. This is incredibly rare in paleontology. Most of the time, soft tissues decompose long before fossilization can occur. But in this case, conditions were absolutely perfect, preserving not just the skeleton, but actual impressions of the creature's hide. And what those impressions show us is mind-blowing. This wasn't smooth, lizard-like skin that you might expect from a dinosaur. This was tough, armored hide covered in rows of raised, knobby structures called osteoderms. Think of it like biological body armor, but not the heavy, cumbersome kind that would slow the animal down. These were lightweight protective structures that added to the creature's intimidating appearance without compromising its speed advantage. The skin texture was incredibly complex, with tiny pebble-like scales covering the entire body, interspersed with larger, more prominent bumps. This wasn't just random decoration. This texture likely served multiple purposes. It could have provided some protection against the claws and teeth of rivals or prey fighting back. It might have helped with camouflage, breaking up the animal's outline in dappled forest light or scrubland environments. But here's what really gets me excited about this discovery. When you combine this armored skin with those massive horns and that intimidating skull shape, you get a creature that looked more like something from a fantasy novel than a real animal. Imagine encountering this thing in the wild. The psychological impact alone would have been devastating to potential prey. And speaking of those horns, let's dive deeper into what they tell us about this creature's behavior. These weren't just random evolutionary accidents. The shape, size, and positioning of these horns suggests they were used in serious combat situations. Picture two adult Carnotaurus facing off over territory or mating rights. These battles wouldn't have been quick affairs. They would have been prolonged tests of strength and endurance. The skull structure supporting these horns was incredibly robust, designed to absorb and distribute the massive forces generated during head-to-head collisions. The neck muscles were enormously powerful, providing the leverage needed to drive those horns forward with devastating impact. This was biological warfare at its finest. But combat wasn't the only purpose these features served. Those dramatic horns and armored appearance likely played a huge role in social dynamics. Imagine the intimidation factor when one of these creatures showed up at a carcass site or water source. Other predators would have taken one look at this horned nightmare and decided they had urgent business elsewhere. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the hunting strategy that made this creature so incredibly successful. Most large predators of the time relied on ambush tactics or overwhelming size to bring down their prey. But Carnotaurus pioneered a completely different approach that was absolutely revolutionary for its time. This was pursuit predation taken to its logical extreme. Instead of hiding and waiting for the perfect moment to strike, Carnotaurus actively chased down its prey across open terrain. And it wasn't just fast for short bursts. Evidence suggests this animal could maintain high speeds over considerable distances, essentially running its prey into exhaustion. Think about the prey animals of the late Cretaceous period. Many of them were built for quick escapes, capable of impressive bursts of speed when threatened. But they weren't designed for prolonged high-speed chases. Carnotaurus exploited this weakness brilliantly. The hunting sequence would have been absolutely terrifying to witness. First, those forward-facing eyes would lock onto a target, calculating distance and trajectory with deadly precision. Then those massive leg muscles would fire, launching the predator forward like a biological missile. The prey animal would bolt, probably confident in its ability to outrun this apparent threat. But here's where Carnotaurus showed its true genius. While the prey exhausted itself in that initial sprint, the predator would settle into a sustainable pace, using that incredibly efficient stride pattern to maintain pressure without burning through its energy reserves too quickly. Those specialized tail tendons would keep it perfectly balanced even while navigating rough terrain at high speed. The psychological pressure on the prey would have been unbearable. Every time it looked back, that horned nightmare would still be there, steadily closing the gap. The prey's energy reserves would drain with each desperate burst of speed, while the predator remained relentless and focused. And when the moment finally came to strike, those razor-sharp teeth would slice through flesh with surgical precision. This wasn't about delivering one massive bone-crushing bite. This was about inflicting multiple precise wounds that would cause rapid blood loss and shock. The curved shape of each tooth was perfectly designed to penetrate and withdraw cleanly, maximizing tissue damage while minimizing the risk of the predator getting its weapon stuck in struggling prey. The neck and jaw mechanics allowed for incredibly quick striking motions, snapping side to side to tear away chunks of flesh from a weakened victim. This was biological precision engineering at work, every component optimized for maximum lethality. But perhaps most impressive of all was how this hunting strategy allowed Carnotaurus to target prey that other predators couldn't effectively hunt. Those massive, long-necked herbivores that dominated the landscape. Their size made them difficult targets for ambush predators, but their relatively slow movement speed made them vulnerable to sustained pursuit. Young or injured individuals of even the largest species would have been potential targets for a determined Carnotaurus. And unlike pack hunters that needed coordination and cooperation, this was a solo operation. One predator, perfectly designed by millions of years of evolution, capable of bringing down prey many times its own size through pure athletic superiority. The more we learn about this creature, the more it becomes clear that Carnotaurus represented something truly special in the history of life on Earth. This wasn't just another dinosaur trying to make a living in the late Cretaceous ecosystem. This was biological innovation at its finest, a creature that found a completely unique ecological niche and dominated it with ruthless efficiency. And here's what really blows my mind about this whole story. Every single feature we've discussed, from those intimidating horns to that specialized skin texture to that incredible locomotion system, all of it came together to create what might have been the most athletically gifted large predator in the history of our planet. But we're just getting started, because the real genius of Carnotaurus becomes apparent when you look at how it fit into its environment. This creature didn't evolve in isolation. It was shaped by the specific challenges and opportunities of late Cretaceous South America, and the way it adapted to those conditions is absolutely fascinating. Picture the world 70 million years ago. South America was undergoing massive geological changes, slowly breaking away from the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. The climate was much warmer than today, with no polar ice caps and sea levels dramatically higher than anything we've experienced in human history. This created a landscape that was perfect for a high-speed predator. The terrain was a mix of open plains, dense forests, and winding river systems. Unlike the dense, closed, canopied jungles you might imagine, much of this environment consisted of more open woodlands and grasslands that provided perfect hunting grounds for a pursuit predator. There was room to run, space to maneuver, and plenty of sight lines for those forward-facing eyes to spot potential targets. And what targets they were! The herbivorous dinosaurs of this time and place were absolutely incredible. Massive, long-necked sauropods that could reach heights of several stories, heavily armored ankylosaurs built like living tanks, and a variety of smaller plant eaters that would have provided perfect prey for a creature like Carnotaurus. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Carnotaurus wasn't the only predator in this ecosystem. It had to compete with other carnivorous dinosaurs, each with their own hunting specialties and territorial demands. And this is where we see just how perfectly this animal was adapted to fill a very specific ecological role. While other predators might have focused on ambush hunting or scavenging, Carnotaurus carved out its own niche as the premier pursuit hunter of its time. This specialization allowed it to coexist with other carnivores without direct competition for the same prey resources. It's like nature created the perfect division of labor among prehistoric predators. The energy efficiency of this hunting strategy was absolutely crucial. Unlike massive predators that needed enormous amounts of food to sustain their bulk, Carnotaurus could maintain its lifestyle on relatively modest prey. Its lightweight build meant lower caloric requirements, and its efficient hunting method meant higher success rates with less energy expenditure per hunt. This efficiency becomes even more impressive when you consider the seasonal variations these animals would have faced. Prey migrations, changing water levels, and seasonal food availability would have created constant challenges for any predator trying to make a living in this environment. But Carnotaurus had the speed and endurance to follow migrating herds across vast distances, essentially turning the entire continent into its hunting ground. Now, let's talk about something that completely revolutionizes our understanding of how this creature lived and behaved. The social dynamics of Carnotaurus were probably far more complex than anyone initially realized. While we often think of large predators as solitary hunters, the evidence suggests these animals had sophisticated social interactions that went far beyond simple territorial disputes. Those impressive horn displays weren't just for combat. They were likely used in elaborate dominance hierarchies and mating rituals that would have been absolutely spectacular to witness. Imagine the courtship displays with these horned predators showcasing their speed, agility, and physical prowess in complex behavioral performances. The fossilized skin evidence also suggests these animals may have had the ability to change their appearance for social signaling. While we can't know for certain about color-changing abilities, the texture and pattern of their hide would have created dramatic visual effects when combined with different lighting conditions and body postures. But perhaps most fascinating of all is what the bone structure tells us about their growth and development. Carnotaurus didn't start life as a perfectly optimized killing machine. Like all complex organisms, it went through distinct developmental phases, each with its own challenges and adaptations. Juvenile Carnotaurus would have faced completely different survival pressures than adults. Too small to take down large prey, but too big to hide effectively, young individuals would have needed to develop their own specialized hunting techniques. This probably involved targeting smaller prey species and developing the speed and agility that would serve them so well as adults. The transition from juvenile to adult hunting strategies would have been a critical period in each individual's life. Those that successfully made this transition would have joined the ranks of the apex predators. Those that didn't would have become prey themselves, contributing to the intense selective pressures that shaped this species over millions of years. And here's something that will absolutely blow your mind. The more we study Carnotaurus, the more we realize that this creature represents something truly special in evolutionary history. This wasn't just another predatory dinosaur trying to make a living in the Cretaceous world. This was biological innovation at its absolute peak. Every major body system was optimized for a very specific lifestyle. The cardiovascular system was enhanced to support sustained high-speed activity. The respiratory system was modified to process the massive amounts of oxygen needed for pursuit hunting. The nervous system was fine-tuned to coordinate complex high-speed maneuvers while maintaining sensory awareness of the environment. But it's not just the individual systems that are impressive. It's how they all work together as an integrated whole. This level of biological coordination is incredibly rare in the fossil record. Most extinct species show evolutionary compromises, trade-offs between different survival strategies. But Carnotaurus achieved something much more remarkable: total optimization for its chosen ecological niche. This brings us to one of the most mind-bending aspects of this creature's biology: the sensory integration systems that allowed it to function as such an effective predator. We've talked about the individual senses, but the real magic happened in how the brain processed and coordinated all this incoming information. Picture this scenario. A Carnotaurus is scanning the landscape for potential prey. Its eyes detect movement in the distance, possibly a herd of herbivorous dinosaurs. Simultaneously, its enhanced hearing picks up the low-frequency sounds of their footsteps and vocalizations. Its sophisticated olfactory system confirms the presence of potential prey and provides information about their health, stress levels, and even individual identity. All of this information flows into a brain that has been shaped by millions of years of evolution to process sensory data and make split-second hunting decisions. The neural pathways connecting sensory input to motor output were incredibly sophisticated, allowing for reaction times that would make modern predators look sluggish by comparison. But the real genius lies in the predictive capabilities this system provided. Carnotaurus didn't just react to what its prey was doing. It could anticipate their movements, calculate interception courses, and adjust its hunting strategy in real time based on constantly changing environmental conditions. This kind of biological computing power is absolutely staggering when you really think about it. We're talking about a living organism that could perform complex trajectory calculations while sprinting at high speed across uneven terrain, all while maintaining perfect balance and preparing for the precise timing needed to deliver a killing strike. And here's where things get even more incredible. Recent research suggests that Carnotaurus may have had the ability to hunt effectively in low-light conditions. The eye structure and brain organization indicate adaptations for enhanced night vision, potentially allowing this predator to extend its hunting activities into dawn and dusk periods when many prey species would be most vulnerable. Imagine the advantage this would have provided. While other predators were limited to daylight hunting, Carnotaurus could operate across extended time periods, essentially increasing its potential hunting opportunities while reducing competition from other carnivorous species. The implications of this nocturnal hunting ability are absolutely fascinating. It suggests a level of behavioral sophistication that goes far beyond simple chase and catch predation. This creature was capable of complex time-based hunting strategies, potentially learning the daily movement patterns of different prey species and timing its hunts for maximum effectiveness. But what really sets Carnotaurus apart from other predators, both ancient and modern, is how it represents a completely unique evolutionary solution to the challenges of being a large carnivore. Most predators throughout history have relied on one of a few basic strategies: overwhelming size and strength, pack hunting coordination, or stealth and ambush tactics. Carnotaurus pioneered something entirely different. It created a new category of predation based on sustained pursuit, athletic superiority, and technological precision. This wasn't just about being fast for a few seconds. This was about maintaining superior performance across all the physical and mental demands of complex pursuit hunting. The evolutionary pathway that led to this incredible specialization is absolutely fascinating to trace. The ancestors of Carnotaurus were part of a group called Abelisaurids, a family of predatory dinosaurs that dominated the southern continents during the Cretaceous period. But while their northern relatives like Tyrannosaurus developed along different evolutionary lines, the Abelisaurids went in a completely different direction. Over millions of years, selective pressures in the unique environments of Gondwana shaped these predators in increasingly specialized ways. Shorter snouts for quicker strikes, reduced arm size to minimize weight, enhanced leg development for speed and endurance, and those distinctive horns for social combat and display. Carnotaurus represents the absolute pinnacle of this evolutionary trajectory. It was one of the last and most highly evolved members of its family, living just before the mass extinction event that ended the age of dinosaurs. In many ways, it represents what might have been the future of large predator evolution if that cosmic catastrophe hadn't intervened. The timing of its existence makes this creature even more poignant. This was biological perfection achieved just moments before the curtain fell on the entire dinosaur era. All those millions of years of evolutionary refinement, all that incredible biological innovation preserved for us in the fossil record like a snapshot of what life was capable of achieving. But here's the twist that makes this story even more incredible. While Carnotaurus itself didn't survive the mass extinction, its legacy lives on in ways that most people never realized. The theropod lineage that included Carnotaurus eventually gave rise to modern birds, and some of those incredible adaptations we've been discussing can still be seen in their feathered descendants. The pursuit hunting strategies, the enhanced sensory systems, the sophisticated neural coordination, all of these innovations were passed down through the evolutionary chain. When you watch a hawk tracking prey or see the incredible aerial maneuvers of a falcon, You're seeing echoes of the same biological principles that made Carnotaurus such an incredible predator. This connection between past and present adds an entirely new dimension to the Carnotaurus story. This isn't just about an amazing extinct animal. This is about understanding the deep evolutionary roots of predatory behavior and biological optimization that continue to shape life on Earth today. The more we study creatures like Carnotaurus, the more we realize that the age of dinosaurs wasn't just a prelude to more advanced life forms. It was a period of biological experimentation and innovation that produced some of the most sophisticated organisms ever to exist on our planet. And that brings us to perhaps the most important lesson of the Carnotaurus story. This creature represents proof that evolution is capable of producing solutions to survival challenges that seem almost too perfect to be real. Every feature, every adaptation, every biological system was precisely calibrated for maximum effectiveness in its specific environment and lifestyle. This level of biological precision represents something that goes far beyond random evolutionary chance. We're looking at millions of years of environmental pressure sculpting an organism into what can only be described as a living weapon of mathematical perfection. But here's what absolutely fascinates me about this creature's place in prehistoric ecosystems. Carnotaurus wasn't operating in some simplified environment with limited challenges. This animal was thriving in one of the most complex and competitive biological landscapes in Earth's history. The late Cretaceous period wasn't just teeming with life. It was absolutely exploding with evolutionary innovation on every level. Think about the sheer diversity of creatures sharing this environment. Massive titanosaurs stretching their necks toward the canopy like biological skyscrapers. Heavily armored ankylosaurs built like living fortresses, covered in spikes and plates that could deflect almost any attack. Swift, agile hadrosaurs with sophisticated social structures and communication systems. And competing predators, each with their own deadly specializations. In this biological arms race, Carnotaurus didn't just survive, it absolutely dominated its niche. And the way it achieved this dominance reveals something profound about how evolution shapes organisms under extreme competitive pressure. Most predators throughout history have been forced to make compromises. You can be big and powerful, or you can be fast and agile, but rarely both. You can have excellent vision or superior hearing, but perfecting one sense often comes at the cost of others. These evolutionary trade-offs are everywhere in nature, reflecting the fundamental limitations of biological design. But Carnotaurus seems to have broken these rules entirely. This creature achieved what engineers would call optimization without compromise, speed without sacrificing power, sensory excellence across multiple systems, structural integrity without excessive weight. This is biological engineering that pushes against the theoretical limits of what's possible in organic systems. The biomechanics alone are absolutely staggering when you break them down. Those massive leg muscles weren't just randomly oversized. The muscle fiber composition, the tendon attachment angles, the bone density distributions, all of it was perfectly calibrated to generate maximum explosive power while maintaining efficiency over extended periods. But it gets even more incredible when you consider the coordination required to make this system work. Running at high speed requires split-second timing between dozens of muscle groups. The slightest miscalculation could result in catastrophic injury. Yet Carnotaurus could execute these complex maneuvers while simultaneously tracking prey, navigating obstacles, and preparing for the precise timing needed to deliver killing strikes. The neural pathways controlling this coordination represent some of the most sophisticated biological computing ever discovered in the fossil record. We're talking about a brain that could process multiple streams of sensory data, perform real-time trajectory calculations, and coordinate incredibly complex motor outputs, all while operating under the intense stress of high-speed pursuit hunting. And here's something that will absolutely blow your mind. Recent analysis of the inner ear structure suggests that Carnotaurus may have possessed three-dimensional spatial awareness capabilities that rival modern fighter pilots. The semicircular canals responsible for balance and orientation were incredibly well developed, providing this creature with an almost supernatural ability to maintain equilibrium during complex maneuvers. Picture this scenario. A Carnotaurus is pursuing prey across uneven terrain at full sprint. Suddenly, the target changes direction, forcing the predator to execute a sharp turn while maintaining speed. The inner ear instantly detects the change in orientation and acceleration. The brain processes this information and sends precise motor commands to dozens of muscle groups. The tail adjusts to provide dynamic counterbalance. The legs modify their stride pattern to maintain traction. All of this happens in fractions of a second without conscious thought. This level of biological automation is absolutely mind-boggling. Modern aircraft require sophisticated computer systems to achieve similar levels of control and stability, yet Carnotaurus was doing it with organic neural networks that evolved naturally over millions of years. But the real genius becomes apparent when you consider how this creature dealt with the massive energy demands of its lifestyle. High-speed pursuit hunting is incredibly metabolically expensive. Most modern predators can only sustain maximum effort for very brief periods before exhaustion sets in. Carnotaurus appears to have solved this problem through a combination of cardiovascular enhancements and metabolic efficiency that borders on the miraculous. The heart and lung systems were massively overdeveloped compared to other dinosaurs of similar size. The blood chemistry was likely optimized for rapid oxygen transport and waste removal. Even the bone structure shows adaptations for improved circulation and reduced metabolic overhead. This wasn't just about being able to run fast. This was about creating a sustainable, high-performance biological system that could operate at peak efficiency across extended time periods. Think of it as the difference between a sprinter and a marathon runner, except Carnotaurus somehow achieved both capabilities simultaneously. The hunting implications of this metabolic superiority are absolutely staggering. While prey animals would exhaust themselves in desperate escape attempts, Carnotaurus could maintain relentless pressure for hours if necessary. This transformed pursuit hunting from a brief, high-risk gamble into a methodical, almost inevitable process of wearing down victims through superior endurance. But perhaps most remarkable of all is how this creature integrated its physical capabilities with sophisticated behavioral strategies. This wasn't just a mindless chase predator operating on pure instinct. Evidence suggests Carnotaurus was capable of complex tactical decision-making that would impress modern military strategists. The forward-facing eye placement provided depth perception accurate enough to judge distances while moving at high speed. But more than that, it allowed for predictive tracking of prey movements. Carnotaurus could anticipate where a fleeing animal would be rather than simply chasing where it had been. This predictive capability transformed hunting from reactive pursuit into proactive interception. The social implications of these hunting abilities add another layer of complexity to the story. Those dramatic horns weren't just weapons or display features. They were likely part of sophisticated communication systems that allowed individual Carnotaurus to coordinate their activities across large territories. Imagine multiple individuals operating in the same general area, each aware of the other's hunting activities through long-distance visual and acoustic signals. When one predator began a pursuit, others might position themselves to cut off escape routes or take advantage of panicked prey movements. This kind of loose cooperation would have multiplied the effectiveness of their individual hunting capabilities. The territorial dynamics alone would have been absolutely fascinating to observe. Unlike modern big cats that defend fixed territories through scent marking and occasional confrontations, Carnotaurus probably operated more like mobile hunting units, claiming temporary dominance over areas based on current prey availability and seasonal movements. Those horn-to-horn combat sequences we discussed earlier weren't just random acts of aggression. They were likely highly ritualized contests that determined access to prime hunting grounds without the risks of serious injury that could compromise survival. The winner gained temporary access to the best prey concentrations, while the loser moved on to find opportunities elsewhere. This system would have created incredible selective pressure for physical perfection. Only the most athletically gifted individuals would have gained access to the resources needed for reproduction. Over thousands of generations, this pressure would have driven the species toward ever greater levels of optimization. And here's what makes this even more incredible. The fossil evidence suggests that Carnotaurus maintained this level of biological perfection right up until the mass extinction event. There is no evidence of evolutionary decline or reduced fitness. In the later specimens, this creature was operating at peak performance when the asteroid impact changed everything. This timing raises profound questions about the nature of evolutionary success. Carnotaurus had achieved what might be considered biological perfection within its ecological niche. It had solved every major challenge associated with being a large pursuit predator. Yet none of that mattered when faced with a global catastrophe that fundamentally altered the planet's climate and ecosystems. The irony is almost heartbreaking. All those millions of years of evolutionary refinement, all that incredible biological innovation, rendered irrelevant by a cosmic accident that lasted mere minutes. It's a sobering reminder that even the most perfectly adapted organisms are vulnerable to changes that operate outside the normal parameters of natural selection. But there's another way to look at this story that's far more hopeful. The biological principles that made Carnotaurus so successful didn't disappear with the mass extinction. They were preserved in the surviving theropod lineages that eventually gave rise to modern birds. When you watch a peregrine falcon diving at over 200 miles per hour, you're seeing echoes of the same aerodynamic principles that allowed Carnotaurus to maintain stability at high speed. When you observe the complex hunting strategies of corvids or the sophisticated social behaviors of many bird species, you're witnessing the legacy of neural innovations that first appeared in creatures like Carnotaurus. This connection between past and present transforms our understanding of what extinction really means. Individual species may disappear, but the biological innovations they represent can persist in modified forms across vast spans of geological time. Carnotaurus may be gone, but its contributions to the evolutionary development of predatory behavior continue to influence life on Earth today. The study of this creature also reveals something profound about the creative potential of evolutionary processes. Given enough time and selective pressure, natural selection can produce organisms that seem to defy the basic limitations we associate with biological systems. The engineering principles evident in Carnotaurus represent solutions to design challenges that human technology is only beginning to understand. Modern robotics engineers study dinosaur locomotion to improve the efficiency of mechanical systems. Aerodynamic specialists analyze the body shapes of extinct predators to enhance vehicle design. Computer scientists examine fossilized neural structures to develop better artificial intelligence systems. In death, Carnotaurus continues to teach us about the possibilities inherent in biological design. This brings us to perhaps the most important insight of the entire Carnotaurus story. This creature represents proof that evolution is not just a process of gradual change and adaptation. Under the right circumstances, it can produce genuine biological revolutions that fundamentally redefine what's possible for living organisms. The transition from typical theropod predator to the highly specialized pursuit hunter represented by Carnotaurus wasn't just an incremental improvement. It was a quantum leap in predatory capability that opened up entirely new ecological possibilities. This creature didn't just occupy an existing niche, it created a completely new category of predatory behavior. And that revolutionary potential is still present in evolutionary processes today. The same mechanisms that produce Carnotaurus are continuing to shape life on Earth, creating new biological innovations and pushing organisms toward ever greater levels of specialization and efficiency. Understanding creatures like Carnotaurus isn't just about appreciating the incredible diversity of extinct life. It's about recognizing the creative potential that exists within natural systems. Every organism alive today represents the culmination of billions of years of evolutionary experimentation, carrying within its genes the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of survival and adaptation. The story of Carnotaurus reminds us that life is capable of achieving levels of complexity and optimization that can seem almost magical in their perfection. This creature existed, it thrived, and it left behind evidence of biological capabilities that continue to inspire and amaze us millions of years after its extinction. But we're still not done exploring the incredible biology of this remarkable predator. Because when you really dive deep into the fossil evidence, you discover that everything we've discussed so far is just the beginning of understanding how truly extraordinary this creature really was. The preservation quality of Carnotaurus specimens has allowed paleontologists to reconstruct details of its biology that are almost never available for extinct species. And what those details reveal pushes our understanding of dinosaur physiology into territory that seems almost too incredible to believe. We're talking about biological systems that operated at levels of efficiency and integration that challenge our basic assumptions about what's possible in organic organisms. The more we learn about this creature, the more it becomes clear that Carnotaurus wasn't just another successful predator. It was something fundamentally different, something that represents a peak of evolutionary achievement that may never be seen again. The thermoregulation system alone represents one of the most sophisticated biological cooling mechanisms ever discovered in the fossil record. Think about the engineering challenge this creature faced every single day. You're a multi-ton predator built for sustained high-speed pursuit in a climate that was significantly warmer than anything we experience today. Your massive muscles are generating enormous amounts of heat with every stride. Your cardiovascular system is pumping blood at incredible rates to supply oxygen to working tissues. And you need to maintain peak performance for extended periods without overheating. Most modern mammals would collapse from heat exhaustion under these conditions. But Carnotaurus had evolved specialized solutions that allowed it to operate like a biological heat exchanger, dissipating excess thermal energy while maintaining optimal core temperature. The skin structure we discussed earlier wasn't just armor and camouflage. Those complex scale patterns and raised osteoderms created surface area for heat dissipation while channeling airflow across the body during high-speed movement. But here's where it gets really fascinating. The blood vessel arrangements visible in the fossil evidence suggest this creature had developed something like a countercurrent heat exchange system. Warm arterial blood flowing to the extremities would transfer heat to cooler venous blood, returning to the core, preventing dangerous temperature spikes in vital organs while ensuring efficient heat distribution throughout the body. Oh, this is the kind of biological engineering that makes aerospace engineers weep with envy. We're talking about a living organism that solved complex thermodynamic problem systems that modern through evolutionary innovation, creating cooling technology struggles to match in terms of efficiency and reliability. And the respiratory adaptations were equally incredible. The lung capacity and airway structures were massively overdeveloped compared to other theropods, but not just for oxygen intake. This enhanced breathing system served double duty as a cooling mechanism, using rapid air exchange to regulate internal temperature through evaporative cooling. Picture this creature in full pursuit mode, those massive nostrils flaring with each breath, drawing in huge volumes of air that simultaneously fuel the working muscles and cool the internal systems. The breathing pattern would synchronize perfectly with the stride rhythm, creating an integrated cardiorespiratory system that operated with clockwork precision. But perhaps most mind-blowing of all is what recent analysis has revealed about the bone structure itself. This wasn't just lightweight construction for speed advantages. The internal architecture of major bones shows adaptations for improved heat dissipation and enhanced structural integrity under extreme stress conditions. The long bones of the legs contained complex internal chambers and passages that served multiple functions. They reduced overall weight without compromising strength, provided space for enhanced blood circulation, and created internal cooling channels that helped regulate temperature during extended high-performance activity. This level of biological optimization represents something that goes far beyond typical evolutionary adaptation. We're looking at what can only be described as evolutionary engineering, where every system was precisely calibrated to work in perfect harmony with every other system. Now let's talk about something that completely revolutionizes our understanding of how this predator interacted with its environment. The chemical analysis of Carnotaurus teeth has revealed isotope signatures that tell an incredible story about its hunting behavior and territorial range. Unlike most large predators that operated within relatively limited areas, the chemical evidence suggests individual Carnotaurus covered enormous territories, potentially traveling hundreds of miles in pursuit of seasonal prey migrations. This wasn't just local hunting. This was continental-scale predatory behavior that required navigation abilities we're only beginning to understand. Think about what this means from a cognitive perspective. This creature needed to maintain mental maps of vast geographical areas, remember seasonal timing of prey movements, and coordinate its own activities with predictable environmental patterns. We're talking about spatial reasoning and temporal planning capabilities that rival those of modern migratory species. The implications for social behavior are equally staggering. If individual predators were operating across such massive ranges, the opportunities for interaction with other Carnotaurus would have been relatively rare, but incredibly significant. Those dramatic horn-clashing contests weren't just local territorial disputes, they were high-stakes encounters between individuals who might not meet again for months or even years. This transforms our understanding of their social structure entirely. Rather than simple territorial animals defending fixed ranges, Carnotaurus operated more like nomadic specialists, following predictable resource patterns across continental landscapes. The strongest and most successful individuals would have gained access to the most productive migration routes and seasonal hunting grounds. But here's what really blows my mind about this discovery. The chemical signatures also revealed dietary information that suggests these predators were far more versatile than anyone previously realized. While we focused on their specialization as pursuit hunters, the isotope evidence indicates they were opportunistic enough to exploit a wide variety of food sources when circumstances demanded it. Seasonal availability, prey population fluctuations, and competitive pressure from other predators would have created constantly changing hunting opportunities. Carnotaurus appears to have been behaviorally flexible enough to adapt its strategies based on local conditions while maintaining its core specialization as a high-speed pursuit predator. This behavioral adaptability adds another layer of sophistication to an already incredibly complex biological system. Most highly specialized predators become vulnerable when their preferred prey becomes scarce. But Carnotaurus seems to have maintained enough behavioral flexibility to survive and thrive across varying environmental conditions. The neurological requirements for this kind of adaptive behavior are absolutely staggering. We're talking about a brain capable of processing complex environmental cues, making strategic decisions about resource allocation, and modifying hunting techniques based on local prey behavior and terrain conditions. Recent computer modeling of Carnotaurus brain structure suggests cognitive capabilities that approach those of modern corvids, widely considered among the most intelligent birds alive today. The regions associated with spatial memory, pattern recognition, and behavioral planning were remarkably well developed for a large predatory dinosaur. But intelligence alone doesn't explain the success of this creature. What made Carnotaurus truly exceptional was how it integrated cognitive sophistication with physical capabilities that pushed the boundaries of what's possible in biological systems. The muscle physiology revealed through microscopic analysis of fossilized tissue is unlike anything seen in modern animals. The fiber composition shows adaptations for both explosive power and sustained endurance that seem almost contradictory. Most organisms have to choose between these capabilities, but Carnotaurus somehow achieved both simultaneously. The secret appears to lie in specialized muscle fiber types that could switch between different metabolic pathways depending on activity demands. During initial acceleration phases, these muscles would operate anaerobically for maximum power output. Once cruising speed was reached, they could transition to aerobic metabolism for sustained performance. This metabolic switching ability allowed Carnotaurus to maintain pursuit hunting strategies that would be impossible for most predators. The initial burst would close distance rapidly with explosive acceleration. Then the sustained phase would methodically wear down prey through superior endurance. Finally, the terminal phase would deploy explosive power again for the killing strike. Each phase required completely different physiological demands, yet this creature could transition seamlessly between them without the performance gaps that limit modern predators. It's like having a sports car that could accelerate like a dragster, cruise like a touring car, and maneuver like a race car, all in the same vehicle. The coordination required to make this system work reveals something profound about the evolutionary potential of complex biological systems. When selective pressure is intense enough and environmental conditions remain stable long enough, natural selection can produce organisms that seem to defy the normal limitations we associate with living systems. But Carnotaurus represents something even more remarkable than individual biological excellence. This creature achieved a level of ecological integration that transformed entire prehistoric ecosystems. Its presence didn't just affect prey species through direct predation pressure. It fundamentally altered the behavioral patterns and evolutionary trajectories of every organism that shared its environment. Herbivorous dinosaurs in Carnotaurus territory had to develop enhanced vigilance systems, improved escape strategies, and more sophisticated group coordination behaviors. The selective pressure created by such an efficient predator drove prey species toward their own evolutionary innovations in speed, sensory awareness, and defensive capabilities. This created what ecologists call an evolutionary arms race, where predator and prey species continuously pushed each other toward greater levels of biological sophistication. The end result was an ecosystem filled with organisms operating at peak evolutionary efficiency, each species honed to perfection by the relentless pressure of survival. The fossil evidence from late Cretaceous South America reveals exactly this kind of biological arms race in action. The herbivorous species that coexisted with Carnotaurus show clear adaptations for dealing with high-speed pursuit predators. Enhanced hearing structures, improved group communication systems, and locomotory adaptations for rapid escape responses. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. The predator-prey dynamics weren't just about individual survival. They were driving ecosystem-wide innovations that increased the overall complexity and efficiency of biological communities. Carnotaurus wasn't just a successful predator. It was an evolutionary catalyst that elevated the performance of entire ecological systems. This ecosystem-level impact reveals something profound about the role of apex predators in shaping the development of life on Earth. These aren't just isolated species trying to make a living. They're keystone organisms whose presence influences the evolutionary trajectory of countless other species across multiple trophic levels. The mathematical models used to analyze these ecosystem dynamics show that the presence of highly efficient predators like Carnotaurus created selection pressures that accelerated evolutionary innovation across entire biological communities. The result was ecosystems that operated with levels of efficiency and integration that modern ecological systems rarely achieve. But perhaps most fascinating of all is what this tells us about the creative potential of evolutionary processes under optimal conditions. The late Cretaceous period wasn't just a time of biological diversity. It was an era of evolutionary experimentation that produced organisms pushing against the theoretical limits of biological possibility. Carnotaurus represents the culmination of this experimental period, a creature that achieved what might be considered the maximum possible performance for a large terrestrial predator, operating within the constraints of organic biochemistry and structural mechanics. The engineering principles evident in this creature continue to inspire modern technological development. Robotics engineers study the locomotory mechanics for improving mechanical systems. Materials scientists analyze the bone structure for developing stronger, lighter, composite materials. Computer scientists examine the neural architecture for advancing artificial intelligence systems. In many ways, Carnotaurus represents a biological blueprint for optimization that human technology is still trying to match. The integration of multiple high-performance systems, the seamless coordination of complex mechanical and biological processes. The adaptive intelligence that allowed for strategic flexibility while maintaining specialized excellence. This creature achieved something that modern engineering struggles to replicate: total system optimization without compromising individual component performance. Every aspect of its biology was simultaneously specialized for maximum efficiency and integrated for seamless system-wide coordination. The more we study organisms like Carnotaurus, the more we realize that the age of dinosaurs represented a peak of evolutionary achievement that may never be repeated. The combination of stable climate conditions, abundant resources, and extended evolutionary time frames created opportunities for biological innovation that don't exist in today's rapidly changing world. Modern organisms face constant environmental disruption, habitat fragmentation, and accelerated extinction pressures that prevent the kind of long-term evolutionary refinement that produced creatures like Carnotaurus. The stable conditions that allowed for such biological perfection may be permanently gone from our planet. This makes the fossil record of these incredible creatures even more precious. We're not just looking at extinct animals. We're studying the preserved remains of evolutionary experiments that revealed the true creative potential of life on Earth under optimal conditions. Every detail we can extract from these fossils represents irreplaceable information about biological possibilities that can never be just eliminated. The extinction of Carnotaurus didn't a species. It closed the book on an entire category of evolutionary achievement. But there's hope in this story as well. The same evolutionary mechanisms that produced Carnotaurus are still operating today. While modern conditions may prevent the development of such highly specialized apex predators, they're creating new opportunities for biological innovation in other directions. Understanding creatures like Carnotaurus helps us appreciate the incredible diversity of solutions that evolution can produce when faced with survival challenges. It expands our conception of what's possible in biological systems and inspires us to protect the evolutionary processes that continue to shape life on our planet. The legacy of Carnotaurus lives on not just in the fossil record, but in our growing understanding of evolutionary potential and biological optimization. This creature reminds us that life is capable of achieving levels of complexity and performance that can seem almost miraculous in their perfection. As we face modern extinction crises and environmental challenges, the story of Carnotaurus provides both inspiration and sobering perspective. It shows us what evolution can achieve given sufficient time and stable conditions, while reminding us of how quickly even the most perfectly adapted organisms can disappear when faced with catastrophic environmental change. The incredible biology of Carnotaurus represents one of evolution's greatest success stories, a testament to the creative power of natural selection operating under optimal conditions. This creature pushed the boundaries of what's possible in biological systems and achieved a level of predatory perfection that may never be equaled again. Yet even as we marvel at its incredible adaptations and mourn its extinction, we can take comfort in knowing that the evolutionary processes that created such biological marvels continue to operate today, constantly creating new forms of life and pushing the boundaries of what organisms can achieve in their endless quest for survival and reproduction. The story of Carnotaurus is ultimately a celebration of life's incredible capacity for innovation, adaptation, and optimization. It reminds us that even in a universe governed by physical laws and mathematical constraints, the creative potential of biological systems knows virtually no bounds. And here's where the story takes an absolutely mind-bending turn that challenges everything we thought we knew about predator evolution. Because when you start examining the evolutionary family tree that produced Carnotaurus, you discover something that will completely revolutionize your understanding of how nature creates biological masterpieces. This creature wasn't just a random evolutionary accident that happened to get lucky with good genes. It was the product of a very specific evolutionary pathway that had been developing for millions of years across the southern continents. Carnotaurus belonged to a group called abelisaurids, and these weren't your typical meat-eating dinosaurs. While the northern continents were producing monsters like Tyrannosaurus rex with their massive skulls and bone-crushing jaws, the southern hemisphere was experimenting with something completely different. The abelisaurids were pushing evolutionary boundaries in directions that nobody saw coming. Think about it from nature's perspective. You've got these massive land masses slowly drifting apart, creating isolated populations that are free to evolve in completely different directions. It's like running multiple evolutionary experiments simultaneously, each one exploring different solutions to the same basic challenge of being a successful large predator. The northern approach was all about brute force and intimidation. Build the biggest jaws possible. Develop crushing bite forces that could shatter bones. Use sheer size and power to dominate prey through overwhelming physical superiority. This strategy worked incredibly well, producing some of the most formidable predators in Earth's history. But the southern continents went in a completely different direction. Instead of maximizing size and bite force, they started optimizing for speed, agility, and precision. The abelisaurids began developing shorter skulls, more efficient body proportions, and those distinctive horned features that would eventually reach their peak expression in Carnotaurus. This represents something absolutely fascinating about evolutionary processes. When populations become geographically isolated, they don't just develop minor variations on existing themes. They can explore completely different evolutionary strategies, sometimes producing solutions that are radically superior to the original approach. The early abelisaurids looked relatively conventional, much like other predatory dinosaurs of their time. But as millions of years passed and selective pressures continued to shape these isolated populations, they became increasingly specialized and bizarre. Shorter faces, stubbier arms, more pronounced head ornaments, enhanced leg development. Each generation pushed these traits a little further, fine-tuning the biological machinery for maximum efficiency within their specific environmental niches. And Carnotaurus represents the absolute pinnacle of this evolutionary trajectory. the final expression of tens of millions of years of continuous optimization. But here's what makes this evolutionary story even more incredible. Carnotaurus wasn't just the end result of gradual change over time. Recent analysis suggests this creature underwent periods of rapid evolutionary acceleration, where major biological innovations appeared in relatively short geological timeframes. These evolutionary sprints were probably triggered by environmental changes that created new opportunities or challenges, climate shifts that opened up different habitat types, prey population changes that favored new hunting strategies, or competitive pressures from other predator species that demanded rapid adaptation. During these periods of accelerated evolution, Carnotaurus ancestors would have experienced intense selective pressure that eliminated anything less than optimal performance. Only the most perfectly adapted individuals would have survived to reproduce, driving the species toward ever greater levels of biological sophistication. The genetic mechanisms underlying this rapid evolution are absolutely fascinating when you consider the complexity of the traits involved. We're not talking about simple changes like color variation or minor size differences. These were fundamental alterations to body architecture, nervous system organization, and metabolic physiology. The coordination required to implement these changes without disrupting existing biological systems represents evolutionary engineering at its most sophisticated. Every modification had to be perfectly integrated with existing structures while simultaneously improving overall performance. But perhaps most remarkable of all is how this evolutionary pathway produced a creature that was simultaneously highly specialized and incredibly adaptable. Most organisms face a trade-off between these characteristics. Specialization usually comes at the cost of flexibility, while adaptability typically prevents the development of peak performance capabilities. Carnotaurus somehow achieved both, creating a biological system that was optimized for specific performance parameters while maintaining enough behavioral flexibility to thrive across varying environmental conditions. This represents a level of evolutionary achievement that borders on the miraculous. The implications of this evolutionary success extend far beyond just understanding extinct dinosaurs. The biological principles that enabled Carnotaurus to achieve such optimization are still operating in evolutionary processes today, shaping the development of modern organisms in ways that we're only beginning to understand. Modern evolutionary biology is discovering that the mechanisms responsible for major evolutionary innovations are far more sophisticated than previously realized. The same processes that produce the incredible adaptations we see in Carnotaurus are continuing to drive biological innovation in contemporary species. Understanding these mechanisms could revolutionize our approach to conservation biology, allowing us to better predict how species will respond to environmental changes and identify which populations have the greatest evolutionary potential for adapting to future challenges. But the Carnotaurus story also reveals something sobering about the fragility of evolutionary achievement. All those millions of years of continuous optimization, all that incredible biological innovation, eliminated in a matter of minutes by an asteroid impact that fundamentally altered planetary conditions. This creature had achieved what might be considered biological perfection within its ecological niche. Yet none of that mattered when faced with environmental changes that operated outside the normal parameters of natural selection. It's a stark reminder that even the most successful evolutionary adaptations are vulnerable to catastrophic external events. The timing makes this even more poignant. Carnotaurus lived during the final few million years before the mass extinction event, representing one of evolution's last great experiments in large predator design, before the entire system was reset by cosmic catastrophe. We can only imagine what further innovations might have emerged if this evolutionary trajectory had been allowed to continue. Would we have seen even more sophisticated pursuit predators? Could abelisaurids have developed capabilities that pushed biological performance into entirely new territories? These questions will forever remain unanswered, but they highlight the incredible creative potential that exists within evolutionary processes when given sufficient time and stable environmental conditions to operate. The fossil record preserves only tiny glimpses of this vast evolutionary experiment, but what we can see suggests that life was pushing against the fundamental limits of what's possible in biological systems. Carnotaurus represents proof that evolution can produce organisms that seem almost too perfect to be real. Yet, despite its extinction, the legacy of Carnotaurus continues to influence our understanding of evolutionary potential and biological optimization. Every aspect of this creature's design provides insights into the creative mechanisms that shape life on Earth. The more we study fossils like these, the more we appreciate the incredible diversity of solutions that evolution can produce when faced with survival challenges. Carnotaurus reminds us that there are always multiple pathways to evolutionary success, and sometimes the most unexpected approaches produce the most remarkable results. This creature's story also emphasizes the importance of preserving evolutionary processes and protecting the environmental conditions that allow for long-term biological innovation. The stable conditions that enabled the development of such sophisticated organisms are increasingly rare in our rapidly changing modern world. But perhaps most importantly, Carnotaurus represents hope for the future of evolutionary biology. If natural selection could produce such incredible biological innovations in the past, imagine what discoveries await us as we continue to explore the fossil record and understand the mechanisms that drive evolutionary change. The incredible biology of Carnotaurus stands as testament to the limitless creative potential of life itself, a reminder that evolution is capable of producing wonders that exceed our wildest imagination and push the boundaries of what we believe possible in the natural world. And there you have it, the incredible, almost unbelievable story of Carnotaurus, a creature so perfectly engineered for destruction that it seems like something out of science fiction rather than our planet's actual history. From those iconic bull-like horns to that lightning-fast pursuit hunting strategy, every single aspect of this predator was honed to absolute perfection over millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Think about what we've discovered together. A dinosaur that could sprint at speeds that would humble modern racehorses. Sensory systems so sophisticated they rival military technology. A cooling system that would make aerospace engineers weep with envy. Social behaviors complex enough to coordinate continental-scale hunting strategies. This wasn't just another prehistoric predator trying to make a living. This was biological optimization pushed to its absolute limits. But perhaps the most incredible thing about Carnotaurus isn't what it achieved, but what it represents. This creature proves that evolution is capable of producing solutions so elegant, so perfectly calibrated, that they challenge everything we think we know about the limits of biological design. And while Carnotaurus itself vanished in that cosmic catastrophe 66 million years ago, its legacy lives on in the birds soaring overhead, carrying forward the evolutionary innovations that made their horned ancestor one of the most remarkable predators ever to walk the earth. The next time you see a falcon diving at incredible speeds or watch the complex hunting behaviors of modern birds, remember that you're witnessing echoes of the same biological genius that created the incredible beast we call Carnotaurus. Evolution's greatest masterpiece may be extinct, but its influence on life continues to this very day.